The story begins in a remote part of Bavaria, Germany, in the early spring of 1922. Hinterkaifeck was not a name found on any official map, but locals knew it as a lonely farmstead about 40 kilometers north of Munich. A small dirt road led there, lined with forest and fields, but it was far enough from the nearest village that the place already felt cut off from the world. 6 people lived there: Andreas Gruber, the aging patriarch, his wife Cecilia, their widowed daughter Victoria, her 2 children, and the maid Maria. From the outside, they appeared to be a hard-working farm family, but beneath the surface their household carried whispers of scandal, tension, and unease. A few days before their deaths, strange things began to occur. Andreas reportedly discovered footprints in the snow that led from the edge of the forest straight to the farm, but none leading back. Inside the house, keys went missing, and they began to hear footsteps in the attic when no one should have been there. Neighbors later recalled how Andreas admitted he felt something evil was watching them. But despite these terrifying signs, he never called the police, preferring to deal with matters alone. On the last day of March 1922, a storm rolled across the Bavarian countryside. That evening, life on Hinterkaifeck appeared normal, but within hours, every member of the household would be dead. Their bodies would be found days later, brutally slain with a farm tool, stacked in the barn as though by someone who had not rushed, but instead taken deliberate, calculated time. The case became one of the darkest mysteries in German history. And here's the chilling hook. Imagine living in a house where unknown footsteps echoed above you, where keys vanished mysteriously, and where footprints arrived from the woods but never returned, only to realize too late that your killer was already inside. For days after March 31st, villagers grew suspicious that something was wrong at Hinterkaifeck. Victoria's children did not attend school, and no one saw the family at church on Sunday. Neighbors noticed smoke from the chimney and assumed work continued as normal. But unease spread when the mail piled up and deliveries went unanswered. On April 4th, a group of concerned townsfolk entered the farm. What they found was horrifying. In the barn, stacked one upon the other beneath hay, lay 4 bodies: Andreas, his wife, Victoria, and her young daughter. Each bore brutal injuries to the head, inflicted with what investigators later determined was a mattock, a tool for breaking soil. Inside the farmhouse, the maid Maria lay dead in her room, while the youngest child, a toddler named Joseph, was found lifeless in his crib. The killer had not just slaughtered a family, but wiped out 3 generations. The crime scene stunned even hardened police officers. Blood had soaked the barn floor, and yet animals had been cared for after the killings. Cows were milked, chickens were fed, and meals had been cooked inside the kitchen. Whoever committed the murders stayed in the house for days, living among the corpses. The silence of the remote farm concealed these acts until discovery. The villagers were gripped with fear. The idea that a murderer had lingered at the farm, calmly tending animals and preparing food, suggested a chilling patience and control. It was no crime of passion. It was as if the killer wanted to demonstrate dominance over the dead, occupying their lives while erasing their future. Police investigators descended on the farm, struggling to process the sheer brutality of the crime. The wounds on the victims showed deliberate force. Victoria and her daughter Cecilia had signs of defensive injuries, suggesting they fought desperately before death. Even more haunting, autopsy reports revealed that young Cecilia may have survived long enough after her injuries to pull out her own hair in agony. The farm itself offered eerie clues. Despite the violent attack, there was no sign of forced entry. Doors were locked as though the murderer had a key, or had lived there long enough to know every latch and bolt. Rumors swirled that Andreas kept a strained and abusive household, with accusations of incest between him and his daughter Victoria. This fueled speculation that the murders were personal, an act of revenge or vengeance tied to family shame. Theories emerged quickly. Some claimed a stranger had wandered in from the forest, hidden in the attic, and finally struck when the moment was right. Others whispered that a neighbor or disgruntled acquaintance had reason to kill. The discovery of those earlier footprints leading to the farm but never away seemed to echo louder with each passing day. Here's the chilling question for you mid-video. If you found footprints leading into your home, but none leaving, would you dare spend another night under that roof? The Grubers did, and it cost them their lives. Over time, investigators compiled a long list of suspects. Suspicion fell on neighbors, farmhands, and even Victoria's rumored lovers. One theory suggested that Lorenz Schlittenbauer, a man with a complicated history with Victoria, could have been involved. He was once believed to be the father of Joseph, the youngest child, though this claim was never proven. When Lorenz arrived at the farm with neighbors to discover the bodies, some noted how unusually calm he appeared. He even entered the house, unlocked doors, and seemed too familiar with the layout. To some, this hinted at guilty knowledge. Others proposed the crime was committed by roaming vagrants or bandits. But the theory collapsed when investigators realized nothing of value was taken. Money was found untouched in the home. A further suggestion was that the murders related to Andreas Gruber's harsh personality. Many villagers disliked him, and his cruelty could have created enemies. Yet the most unsettling idea remained the one Andreas himself suspected, that someone had been secretly living in the farmhouse. The noises in the attic, the missing keys, the strange newspaper found on the property days earlier, all pointed to a hidden intruder who had stalked the family for days, maybe even weeks, before striking. Despite intensive efforts, no definitive proof tied any suspect to the crime. The more authorities investigated, the more the shadows of Hinterkaifeck deepened. In the decades that followed, the Hinterkaifeck murders took on a life of their own. The brutality, the isolation, and the sheer strangeness of the case burned it into German memory. Forensic methods at the time were limited, and crucial evidence was mishandled or lost. The farm itself was eventually demolished, as no one wished to live where such horrors had occurred. A simple memorial now stands where the farmhouse once stood. The mystery continued to fascinate criminologists, writers, and filmmakers. Theories resurfaced with each passing generation, but none ever solved the puzzle. In modern times, DNA evidence was tested on items kept from the crime scene, but even that yielded no clear answers. The case remained cold, unsolved, a ghostly reminder of evil lurking in unexpected places. The enduring horror of Hinterkaifeck lies not only in the killings, but in the silence that followed. For 6 lives to vanish in one night without justice raised a disturbing thought. Sometimes killers walk free, blending back into ordinary life, leaving only questions behind. More than a century has passed since the night Hinterkaifeck was soaked in blood. The murderer, or perhaps murderers, vanished into history without leaving behind a confession or conviction. What chills people today is not just the violence, but the idea that the killer might have been close, even familiar. Imagine neighbors greeting him in the village, unaware they spoke to a person who had slaughtered a family in cold blood. The unanswered details keep the story alive. Who fed the animals? Who cooked meals while corpses lay nearby? Why did the killer stay? And why did he vanish just as suddenly? These questions will likely never be solved, leaving Hinterkaifeck as one of history's most haunting unsolved crimes. And here's the final hook. The Gruber's farm is gone, but the shadows of Hinterkaifeck remain. If walls could speak, perhaps they would tell us who crept from the woods, who lingered in the attic, and who wielded the mattock that ended 6 lives. Until then, the silence of Hinterkaifeck speaks louder than any confession.